So we started last week, chapter 29.
There are enough books?
And we'll learn, we'll do it again. We have new students and some old students that haven't been here in a while, so we'll give them some courtesy and see if we can catch them up. Chapter 29 on page 123. In these chapters, the Alter Rebbe is discussing the idea of joy. That one of the most important, if not the most important thing in overcoming your challenges against your evil inclination is the a joyful attitude in your service of Hashem. Depression is out of the question, there's no place for it. Until now, the Alter Rebbe discussed a number of methods of overcoming different types of depression or different sources for depression. For example, if someone is depressed because he has physical problems, material problems, health problems, someone's depressed because he has spiritual problems, someone's depressed because he can't concentrate during davening and he has all these negative thoughts that come in during davening and learning, etc. And so that was chapter 26, 27, and 28.
Oh my God.
Welcome. How are you?
Hello. Just talking about you.
Sorry, I'm late.
Do you have the Tanya back?
Yeah. In this chapter, the Alter Rebbe is going to talk about a different type of situation where a person can become frustrated and depressed over what he calls the dullness of heart. You're just not moved. You just can't get yourself to overcome your challenges. Look what he says. There's yet an additional aspect that the Beinanim, you know who the Beinani is, must contend with. Namely, that occasionally and even frequently they experience a dullness of the heart, which the heart becomes like a stone. And the person is unable, try as he might, to open his heart to the service of the heart, namely prayer. He davens, he concentrates, he tries his best, he can't get into it. In other words, the heart is not doing it, it's not happening. Also at times, he's unable to wage war against the evil impulse, so as to sanctify himself in the things that are permissible because of the heaviness that is in his heart. If you remember, we discussed this last week at great length, or last time. What he means over here is, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya introduces the idea of, to him, divine worship is not only not to sin, God forbid, and to do all the mitzvahs, that's a given. But the real worship of God is someone who is able to subdue and withhold from pursuing even permissible pleasures, but they're not for a godly purpose. And he says, sanctifying yourself, look at the words. Also at times he's unable to wage war against the evil impulse so as to sanctify himself in the things that are permissible. Food, kosher food, are permissible, right? But you can eat kosher food as a glutton, just because your stomach likes good food. Some people can't get enough of it. They just love food. So they keep kosher, but they're still gluttons. Or they're, So there's a mitzvah in the Torah to sanctify, an ideal in the Torah, to sanctify yourself in that which is permissible. Now, not easy. It's a very difficult thing. And the greater desire you have for something, even if it's permissible, the greater challenge it is to sanctify yourself in that area. See, this is a person that finds itself very difficult to sanctify himself in those areas because of the heaviness that is in his heart. It's not that he doesn't know that he has to sanctify. It's not that he's ignorant. In the mind he knows it. It's the heart that is this obstacle here. It's not enough for a mind to know the information. In order to really serve God, your heart has to be involved. And some people just find the heart to be dulled, heavy. And they can't overcome this challenge. They'll never sin, but to go sanctify yourself in permissible matters is already a step further. For that you need an alacrity, a love, a passion, and so on. And the heart doesn't have that. It doesn't. It's so too heavy on him. So this is a Beinoni. Imagine what we're talking about. We're talking about a Beinoni who never sins. But he has a hard time overcoming the permissible world, the world of permissibility. Not to take advantage of everything that's permissible. Just because it's permissible becomes, there's an old Hasidic word. That which is prohibited is out of the question. You're not allowed to. And that which is permitted, you don't have to. That which is prohibited, you're not allowed to. And that which is permissible, you don't have to. Right? That's the Hasidic way of life. Now you may ask why. What's wrong with permissible things? What? You understand the importance of this ideal?
Sure.
Explain it. How do you understand it? In other words, this is not a challenge question. This is just a conversation, a discussion. In other words, what is the problem with permissible things? Why would that be something that is
There's nothing
a
wrong with
negative?
permissible things.
Because he takes it to such a high standard that it has to be for the purpose of serving Hashem.
Okay.
And so if it's not going to be for the purpose of serving, if you're going to have the extra cookie or the extra cake because you just feel like it, and it's not going to be in the name of Hashem, because
Right.
then you might as well not have it.
Why? It's permitted.
It's permitted, but somebody else can have it, or
No, we're not
See, there's
talking about.
no
That's
need.
that's not the point. That's
It's-
own. That's not.
it's just
What
not-
happens is there's no one around. It's not.
nobody's around. It's just you're overdoing it, not for the love of Hashem's purpose, so to speak.
At the end of the day, it's like empty
Right.
value,
calories.
empty calories, right?
It's-
You're
right.
just
It's empty
enabling,
calories. So.
you're
Right.
enabling your animal
Yes.
instinct.
Right.
But if you're not
enabling
doing
the
it,
animal instinct.
Right.
And what's wrong with that?
then it's
It's a permissible animal. It's not a bad animal.
but it's not for the
But
purpose
it's
of serving
excess.
God.
It's excess.
It strengthens the physicality in you and diminishes the spirituality in you.
It strengthens the physicality in you. And are we not supposed to strengthen? Are we not supposed to have a healthy body?
Only to the point where it's necessary to maintain your health and well-being. Beyond that, if you, for example, the question.
And let's say if it's to maintain your health.
You need to maintain your health to serve Hashem.
So it's to serve
To
Hashem.
serve Hashem.
Your health is to serve Hashem, and you must eat to preserve your health.
Okay.
And it's permitted to eat.
And what happens if someone wants to preserve his health because he just wants to be healthy? Is there any problem with that?
No.
Hashem, not Hashem. Yeah, I want to be healthy. I don't want to be sick in the hospital.
All right.
I want to see a
Let
doctor.
us assume that that's the case.
Yeah.
And in order to accomplish this,
He eats.
then not only eats, he spends 14 hours a day at the gym.
No, he does it
miles a
normally.
day.
He does it with balance. He's a balanced individual.
Oh,
So let's take a person.
yeah,
He wakes up in the morning, he has his breakfast.
right.
Oh, he davens. Of course he
When
davens.
you
He'll
say
never
that's-
miss
how
davening.
much breakfast does he have?
A normal meal, a normal
enough to maintain
breakfast.
his
Yes,
health.
enough to maintain his
Yeah,
breakfast.
that's
Wait a
not-
minute.
yeah,
Then he
go
goes for
ahead.
an hour to the gym,
Uh-huh,
and then he goes to work for 8 hours.
right.
And he eats lunch in the middle to keep his healthy body. He goes to work for 8 hours to provide for his family. He comes home and he eats supper to maintain his health, and then he does homework with his kids, and then he goes to sleep.
Doesn't
But the
work.
whole day he hasn't thought about God. He thought about health
Yeah,
and about parnasa. Is there a problem there?
yeah, there is.
Oh, what's the problem?
The reason you're supposed to be healthy, and the reason to preserve your body, supposedly, is to serve Hashem. So you should be able to serve Hashem. If this same man was concerned for his health because he davens all day, he learns Torah all day, he can't get sick, he's got a lot of Torah to learn, this and that, you could make an argument. But when the aim becomes preserving your
No,
health.
I said he davens
But
an hour,
everything-
he'll learn his hour.
Oh,
His
you
thoughts-
His whole day is not, in other words, he eats because he wants to be healthy, not because he wants to serve Hashem, and not because
But
of this.
he's-
But the main, his
He's
thoughts,
not-
but his
he's not-
thoughts should be with Hashem while he's exercising,
Right.
while
Well,
he's
he's
eating,
eating-
while
he's eating a normal
No,
meal.
my point to you is,
Yeah.
what is the problem of not thinking about Hashem when I do exercise?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
You're either
According to him,
serving
there's a
yourself
problem. No,
or
there
you're
is not.
serving Hashem.
He's
No.
serving himself.
No. But,
And-
but
and
this is
that's-
Serving him. You want to
You're
call it
doing
serving
exercise.
yourself? Call it serving yourself, but it is self. It's
and-
about your health.
We have to differentiate between that which is necessary to preserve you and that which is necessary to give you pleasure in excess of that.
No, I'm talking, even if it's not to give you pleasure in excess of that.
So if a guy, if this man eats enough to prevent him from getting sick and starving, it's one thing.
That's what he's eating.
No,
To get him to be healthy.
we're not supposed to be sick.
Right, so is there a problem with
No
No,
problem.
the problem comes is that if he's eating more food than he needs to do that. In other words, he's already eaten enough to preserve his health, and now he feels like having the kitchen sink at Jackson's, yeah, or something like that.
Seems to know. How does someone know the name
So
of it?
here's the answer. So here's the thing. The Alter Rebbe goes a step further. According to the Alter Rebbe, a person that does exercise in the morning for an hour with balance, normal, with the normal measure, eats the normal measure, sleeps the normal measure, does everything normal, not in excess, but he lacks the thought of serving Hashem, it is tantamount to idol worship.
He's putting himself.
It's literally idol worship to
But
him.
you
Why?
just-
And he explains it. We learned it before in chapter
you said
22.
he's thinking of Hashem if he exercises and stuff.
I said if
The
he
guy you
doesn't.
described,
Yeah.
he
I said if he
davens,
doesn't.
he
We said
learns
before,
Torah and
though.
everything.
No, I said when he's learning, he's learning. But when he's exercising, he's not thinking about Hashem. He wants to be healthy. A person just wants to survive. He has a survival instinct. No one wants to be sick.
Okay.
So he doesn't have, it's not an intention because I want to be healthy in order tomorrow I should learn better. He doesn't have those thoughts. He just wants to be a healthy person. He goes on a vacation to have a nice vacation. Nothing in excess. He'll go once a year for a week's vacation with his family to have a good time somewhere. Nothing in excess. It's not, the Alter Rebbe considers that it's almost, to him it's not the violation in the Torah of idol worship. You don't flag a person or kill a person like that because he's not, it's like idol worship. Why? He explained it before. He said that what does it mean you want to be healthy? Why do you want to be healthy? He says like this, if you called it self-serving. If you're doing it for yourself, you're right. If you're doing it for your self-preservation, who are you to begin
More
with?
important
Meaning,
than Hashem.
is there anything in this world that is not godliness? No. Now, you can't say we're not here. We're definitely here. So what do you mean there's nothing here besides godliness? There's you, there's me, there's this table, this video machine. There's a lot of things that are not godly. And what's the answer, of course? Hashem Echad is true. God is one, end of story. What does it mean God is one? He's one because everything is an extension of God. The book, the table, the coffee, everything. What's godliness about, godly about this? When a Yid takes it and drinks it and makes a bracha on it, and the intention is to be able to be awake, to learn Torah, or to serve God in any other way, that makes this thing godly. That includes this into Hashem Echad. The minute you don't do that, you separate yourself from God. Not that it's not sinful. Again, it's not sinful, but it's just separateness. Separateness doesn't mean sin. It just means separateness. If you're really self-centered, which even in permissible things, it's to the exclusion of God. It is a big problem, and therefore that there's an injunction and an ideal in the Torah that a person has to sanctify himself in everything that is permissible. What does sanctify himself mean? To turn it into a godly expression, a godly experience. That every time you go to the pizza shop and you buy pizza, it should be a godly experience. How do you do that? It's not so simple. A lot of times you can get carried away with permissible pleasures, and it becomes more about yourself than about anything else. That's just because we are naturally drawn to pursuing our own pleasures. It's very difficult to utilize every pleasure for God. That's why Hasidim, according to the Tanya, and especially as you'll see soon in chapter 29, how he discusses what to do about this, you will see, and we learned it in chapter 27 also, the idea of subduing the nature. Not the evil nature, subduing the animalistic nature, what you said before. So what's so terrible? You have to subdue it because the animal is self-centered. The animal within us, the animalistic soul, as we call the human soul, is very self-centered. Self-centered is already a contradiction to God-centered. And the minute something is self-centered, not God-centered, it's already a problem. It denies the oneness of Hashem. And when you deny the oneness of Hashem, you're an idol worshiper. So you may not be bowing to the golden calf, but you're bowing to your own self. You're putting yourself apart, and more important than anything else at this moment. Even more important than God. You're saying my breakfast is now more important than anything else. The minute you say I'm here to eat, survive, I mean, what's survival outside of Hashem? Not for a godly purpose. That means you are now more important than even God. Oh, that's a big problem. So, so therefore the Aveda, the divine worship, the ideal of serving God in everything we do, even the permissible, every moment is a very difficult thing. And therefore the heart has to be very inspired in order to keep a person motivated to that degree. Not every person's heart is that inspired. Some people are just heavy, they're not in the mood, right? I won't sin, God forbid. I will never do anything against what God said explicitly. But for me to devote every minute of my day to God is a whole different story. It's a very, that we find very hard. It's heavy hearts, dull hearts, however he calls it. What do you do? What does such a person do? Now, the Hasidim of the Alter Rebbe, many Jews came to him and they complained. We just find it very, very difficult to live up to this ideal. And they came to Yechidus to him and they complained about it. And it depressed them. As try as we may, it doesn't go. We just don't have we can't muster up the strength to live that life 24/7. So what does he say? So there's a suggestion he gives. In this case, the advice given in the Holy Zohar is, as the president of the Heavenly Academy said in the Gan Eden, in paradise, a wooden beam that will not catch fire should be splintered. A body into which the light of the soul does not penetrate should be crushed.
That doesn't seem so uplifting.
It's not uplifting. It's not uplifting, meaning to say, you got a problem. You're admitting you have a problem. You have to deal with the problem. Sometimes in dealing with the problem, you got to do something about it. What do you do? It's your body that's the problem. He's describing a person whose body is the problem. What do you mean the body? The physical part of ourselves. The neshama is interested, the body the heart is not allowing it. The body is the problem. Break it. What does break it mean? So first of all he explains. The reference to the light of the soul, what do he say? The body into which the light of the soul does not penetrate. So he says the reference to the light of the soul is that the light of the soul and of the intellect does not illuminate to such an extent as to prevail over the coarseness of the body. For although he understands and contemplates in his mind on the greatness of God, this is not apprehended and implanted in his mind to a degree that would enable him to prevail over the coarseness of the heart because of the nature of this coarseness and crassness. The cause being the arrogance of the klipa, which exalts itself. Klipa means the shell, the husk, the antithesis of that which is holy. It's called a klipa because it covers everything that's holy. So he says like this, because of the nature of this coarseness and crassness, the cause being the arrogance of the klipa which exalts itself above the light of the holiness of the divine soul, obscuring and darkening the light thereof. So that's the problem. The body is the real problem over here. The body is coarse, the soul is divine and refined, and the light of the soul and of the intellect in his mind does not penetrate the body to the degree, and his mind to the degree that it can influence and do away a little bit with the coarseness of the body. So what should he do? Therefore one must crush it and cast it down to the ground. That is to say, by setting aside point. That is to say, by setting aside appointed times for humbling oneself and considering oneself despicable and contemptible. Imagine. Did you ever think of yourself as despicable and contemptible?
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah,
You really mean that?
you've done something.
You really mean that? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you say something that you shouldn't have said.
No,
Despicable.
and contemptible.
No, that's
Contemptible.
a little harsh.
It's a very important point. It's not harsh at all.
To think of yourself as despicable?
Yeah.
If you just think of someone else doing what you did, you know,
Yeah.
What did you do?
definitely.
1 second. What did you do? You didn't do anything. We're talking about a person that didn't sin.
We're not talking about you.
We're not talking about
Beinoni.
this. This is a Beinoni.
This is a Beinoni.
We're not talking about
That's
this.
not a you're a Russia.
the Beinonies don't commit the sin, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the sin in mind, and it doesn't mean that they don't.
What does it mean, have the sin in mind?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What is this? If you wish someone were to have a car accident,
No one,
well,
Beinoni never wishes that.
why not?
He doesn't. That's because if he did,
He
it wouldn't be a Beinoni. That's already a sin.
No, but my understanding is that Beinoni is someone who never commits sins.
In the mind either.
In the mind either?
Right,
Doesn't
sure.
he have a...
But he comprehends the
He can relate to
concept.
sin, but he doesn't. He would never sin in his mind either. He'll never think a
How is the
sinful thought.
How is the Beinoni then differentiated from the tzaddik in that
The
respect?
tzaddik doesn't even want to do any sin. The Beinoni still has a desire for it, but he'll never do it.
So he
That means the
has to think
tzaddik
about it.
and
But
the
he has the
Beinoni
sin
are
in
the
mind.
same in
That's what-
behavior.
But the Beinoni has the sin in mind.
No, what do you mean the sin in mind?
You're saying the tzaddik it never crosses the tzaddik's mind to sin, right?
He's repulsed by sin.
He's repulsed by sin.
Right.
The Beinoni apparently isn't.
No.
Okay. So in other words, the Beinoni can conceive of himself
He can
doing
just,
something.
yeah,
that
mind,
he
a
wouldn't
thought
do.
will enter his mind, but he'll throw it right out.
Okay, fine.
So what's
Okay,
wrong with that?
Because he might say, what kind of a person am I if I had this sinful thought?
Oh,
And then you will think of yourself as contemptible
Oh.
and despicable. No?
Oh. What's the contempt over here for yourself?
That you shouldn't
You didn't do anything wrong.
No, but you
You
think
didn't do anything wrong, so what's contemptible?
But you think-
You know what's contemptible? I'll tell you what's contemptible. Imagine, I'll give you an example. You have a wife or a spouse, a husband or a wife, and or your father, your mother, your father. You know that your mother hates a certain behavior, and you love it. Imagine you know your mother and father hate this behavior, and you'll never do it, but you love it anyway. You wish you could do it. You have a desire for it. They hate it, and you want it. What kind of a child is this? I'm so far from my mother and father in my attitudes. You're right. My behavior, I'll never do anything against them. But I love what they hate. What kind of a person am I? What kind of a child am I? She hates it, and I love it.
Can you give us a specific?
I can give you a specific with God. Yeah, God hates selfishness, and you love selfishness. Selfishness, not I don't care about you. Selfishness, self-centeredness. I mean,
Okay.
and it's more than that. God hates sin, and you can relate to it. I like it, meaning I like it. I'll never do it,
Right.
but I have the desire for it. He can't take it, and I love it. Imagine how far we are from God. Imagine how distant we are.
So,
This is the Beinoni. I'm not even talking about the sinful person. The sinful person is already altogether in
We're
there.
another story.
Nowhere. But I'm talking about Beinoni. He should feel the contempt. Look how distant I am from from God. What he's repulsed by, I feel attracted to. I'm attracted to that what God rejects all outright. Imagine the distance. Imagine the distance. So, are you to be blamed for this? No. The Alter Rebbe already said in chapter 28 27. That you shouldn't blame yourself for this. This is our condition. We're born this way. So you're not to blame. But look what a terrible situation it is. Just the contempt is not, you belong in jail. No, you don't have to be punished. But this is repulsive. What kind of a creation are you? God hates what you love. Imagine that.
But God put this.
Or you love what God hates. What?
But God put this in your mind.
I know, but that just shows how distant we are from God.
Yeah, but yet on the other hand, look what Hashem did to Pharaoh. How he hardened his heart.
He didn't harden our hearts.
He didn't harden our hearts, but he hardened his heart. So he had that.
But that was already a punishment because of what he did. That was part of the punishment. But he hardened his heart. He was a sinful person. Pharaoh. We're not talking about Pharaoh here. We're talking about Balaam.
No, I understand. But the thought came into Hashem's mind to do this. I'm going to get back at this guy.
I'll take you a step
evil.
further. The very fact that your creation is already contemptible. Contemptible. Despicable. What is a creation? A creation says one thing, I am. You are? Only Hashem is. So imagine...
You're right.
So he gave us a problem.
Yeah, you created it. It's not your fault.
Right, he's not saying
It's not your fault. Don't beat yourself over it. But
Can we say
but-
it's his fault?
it is his fault. 100% it's his fault. I wouldn't say a word fault, but it's his doing. It's his doing.
It's his wish.
It's his doing. There's a reason why he did it. Don't get me wrong. There's a purpose for everything. But the bottom line is, with us and God are in two different worlds. And that to the Beni is contemptible. That there's something in this world that is so distant from God that the two just don't see eye to eye.
So how does he?
God's repulsed by this and I'm attracted to
So
it.
how does he fix it?
Breaks the body. Split
By not having the extra piece of pizza, by not
by
having
beating
a
it up a
cupcake.
little bit, by feeling contempt. Number one, setting aside times to think about how despicable we are. If you, in that sense.
But only at certain times.
Oh,
No, you can't think about it all day.
That's selfish.
No, but you have to understand the point of it. What's despicable of it? It's not even your fault.
right.
It's not your fault.
You're not doing it, so it's sinful.
But you're just thinking about it, so it's sinful.
What?
Just thinking about it is not sinful.
Like now. Like now.
No, if it enters your mind right away, you send it out, that's not sinful.
Well,
No.
how much time?
That's not a sin. What do you mean, how much time?
Can you think about it for 3 seconds?
No.
2
The
seconds?
minute it goes in, you have to disregard it.
I don't. The next life.
Now, the Rebbe already said in chapter 27 that the thought goes into your mind, you have no control. If you let it stay there, you have a lot of control.
That's
Right.
the key.
I remember that.
That's where sin starts. What?
That's true.
Martin Luther, the Protestant leader, had this saying, which I always liked. He says, I can't control a white bird flying around my head, but I don't have to let him make a nest in my hat.
Right.
I think it's exactly
Same
the same.
thing.
That's what it was.
The Rebbe says he defines the Beni, to get the anatomy and the soul of the makeup of the person, is that there's nothing you can do about that. That's beyond our control. That sinful thoughts will enter our mind, meaning we're attracted to them. But we have to, the minute it comes in, you have to get it out. So that's what he's saying. The body itself is despicable, especially with its desires. A stone is despicable if you think about it. Why is a stone despicable? If you go a step further, what is a stone? It's a creation that says, I am. Takes up space. What do you mean you are? You're nothing. Who are you? There's only God.
I don't think
The minute something stands out as a separateness to a refined Jew, a refined person, that's despicable. There's you, there is something besides God, that thought alone is despicable.
So you're looking at a stone and you say you're
No,
Which is
no one goes
false.
around saying the
Kick
stone
the
is
stone.
despicable. I just gave an example of a stone and told that what's despicable especially is us. Because we are attracted to sin. A stone is not attracted to sin. The stone is only attracted to being, which is already a problem, but not as big a problem as we. We're the real problem. Unless you're tzaddik.
That's like an amazing
Unless you're tzaddik.
concept.
It is an
for
amazing
a
concept.
human being to come up with. This is otherworldly.
It is.
It's totally otherworldly.
It's not otherworldly. What it is it's total God consciousness.
This person wrote this is otherworldly.
The
In my
Alter Rebbe was
opinion.
otherworldly. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that he was totally to get this concept to that extent.
Yeah. But then he goes a step further. Look what he says now. So what does he say here? Therefore, one must crush it and cast it down to the ground, that is to say, by setting aside appointed times for humbling oneself and considering oneself despicable and contemptible. This, the Alter Rebbe says to someone that feels dullness of heart. The regular being that doesn't feel dullness of heart, the Alter Rebbe doesn't say this. Because he's working it over. He's working over his body. He's getting it out of the way, so to say.
So you
Not
feel
by
bad.
breaking it. What?
So you feel bad, feel worse.
But that'll help you.
Yeah.
That'll help you do away with the coarseness of the body. What is the problem with the body? It's coarse. It's not anti-God, but it's very foreign to godliness. Not by its own doing, it's by God's doing. Whatever the case is, it is the condition of the body, which is a problem. So it's contemptible in that sense. If you go near a garbage can, it stinks, yeah? Is it the fault of the garbage? It's no one's fault, but it is contemptible. It's disgusting. You want to walk away from it, right? It's no one's fault.
Right.
But a normal person can't stand near it, right?
Right.
It's exactly the same thing with the body. It's not your fault, but a normal person can't stand near it. A refined person that's God conscious can't stand such an existence that is attracted to everything God's not attracted to. And especially that he allows his attraction to take him over, not in action, but he can't overcome the
thought process.
he has a problem with the permissible things. Yeah, that's what he described in the beginning of the chapter. By setting aside times, appointed times for humbling oneself and considering oneself despicable and contemptible. As it is written, a broken heart, a broken spirit, this is the Sitra Achra, which is the very man himself. What's the broken heart that he's talking about, the broken spirit? That you should feel this once in a while. Now, this is the Sitra Achra, which is the very man himself and the intermediate people. Sitra Achra means the other side, the antithesis, the holiness. That's the very man himself and the intermediate people, in whose heart the vital soul which animates the body is in its native strength. Hence it is the very man himself. He's saying like this by a Beinoni, by the regular person, not the tzaddik, that is. Not the tzaddik. A non-tzaddik, we have two souls, we just said, right? We learned all throughout Tanya. The godly soul and the other soul, the human soul, and the animalistic soul. Which is the main identity? Which is the main identity of the person? The first or second soul? That's the regular soul or the godly soul?
The main identity.
What's the real you?
That's the animal soul.
Yeah. The real us is the animal soul. The godly soul is a guest, so to say. Meaning it's put in us. Who's us? The animal soul. The godly soul is put in the body and the animal soul. And we take care of it, we nourish it, we give it to food, meaning daven, we learn a little, we let it learn a little, we let it do mitzvahs, we take care of it. But who's taking care of it? The body and the animal soul, that's our main self. That's the real person by a Beinoni. Not so by a tzaddik. What were you saying? What were you going to say?
I'm not so sure. When you say, if I say, who are you? You're not your feet exactly, or your stomach, or your spleen. What defines you is more or less your personality, which is not a function of your animal soul. I wouldn't.
He doesn't have to have a personality.
What do you mean? If you say who, if he doesn't have a personality,
But
there's no
he
in
is
other words,
he,
But that is
and
part of
therefore,
your soul.
it's not, whereas the
How-
godly soul is godly.
Let me say, when you
It's
say,
of God.
I want, who's this I that wants? Your godly soul or your human soul?
Human.
depends what you want. Yes.
No,
If you say,
once
I
you
want
say
to serve
I,
God, that's not your animal soul.
Who's the
no.
I when you say I? What's the I in a regular person? His human soul. The godly soul is already put into it. It's an
I
additional soul.
understand that, but
Okay.
but what's you? What makes you you? In other words, it's
The animal soul.
Hold-
That's what makes
you
me.
think so?
Yeah.
If I have two twins, identical twins,
Mm-hmm.
with the same bodies and everything, and I have the two of you at a table, and I can't tell you apart physically, but one of you is a good person, the other one is a bad person. You have nothing good to say about anyone else. The other one has nothing but bad to say about anyone else. If I have the two of you at the table, the only way I'm going to differentiate between the two of you will not be your animal soul functions. You might eat the same, you might breathe the same.
The
Your
animal
blood
soul
sugar
is not
might
only
be the
eating
same.
and
I
sleeping. The animal
understand.
soul is all the character.
All the,
There's also
character, no.
character.
Just drives and needs, different than character. Animal soul
It could
is...
be. No, you
is-
can
is
refine your animal soul.
How can you do that?
Why not?
Because your animal soul is interested in one thing, which is what? The id.
What's the
preservation
yid? By
of the-
some people, the yid is lying on the beach all day. By another person, the yid is listening to refined music. By a third person, is giving charity and being nice to people.
And that's the whole purpose of life. Because if we were just our divine soul, which is
Let's
a
talk
piece
about a
of
non-Jew.
God,
Let's talk about a Gentile.
Mhm.
A Gentile doesn't have the neshama, the extra neshama. He has one soul, the human soul. Right? He doesn't have the Yiddish neshama. He has the human soul. The Yid, take two twins, do the same exact thing by the two twins, with two Gentiles. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's the animal soul. This one is a refined animal soul. This one is a grotesque animal soul, or a coarse animal soul. The animal souls also vary. It spans the gamut.
But animal souls are charged with the preservation of you.
Yeah, and some people see my preservation as eating chocolate. Some people see my preservation as doing good deeds to my neighbor. That's what I don't want to hear about chocolate all day. He's a better person, so he's self-preservation. He wants people to remember him for the good deeds that he did. It's also self-preservation.
The magic word there, the operative word is he wants. That
Right.
want part is what makes it part of the animal soul.
Okay, it's fine.
But let's take that part of the Gentile personality. That has nothing to do with want.
There's no such thing.
Why not?
He's not human if he doesn't want.
Why? What do you mean he's not human if he doesn't?
What person doesn't want?
I'm not saying a person doesn't want. I'm taking a particular act of some kind.
Yeah.
But,
It's
if that
completely
act,
selfless?
pardon? Yes.
Would you tell me what example?
Well, it might take me a while to think of one, but I'm not sure that.
Sorry, it's not so simple.
Yeah, exactly. But Mother
We'll talk about
Mother
it.
Teresa is a difficult problem.
Yeah,
There's
it
a
is
slippery
a
slope there
difficult
that you can get into.
You're
You
right.
have to watch out. Let me take this.
Even her, you think she's selfless?
No.
yeah.
I'm not sure.
No.
I'm not
No,
even
no,
No,
good
I'm
deeds.
not
Good
sure.
deeds could be motivated by
Sure.
completely selfish things. The
Right.
satisfaction of doing the good deed.
Right,
The,
sure,
I'm
exactly.
great
Yes.
and look what I've done
Right.
here. All of that.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a guarantee.
right.
But
But it's definitely a
And the-
refined
Yeah.
human soul. There's no
that's-
doubt about that.
No question about it. But there's still an is satisfaction there. It's something that
Sure.
That's right. So the animal soul.
And there's
will
nothing
drive
wrong with
itself
that,
to
by
those
the way.
places. I'm not
There's
saying
nothing
there's
wrong.
anything wrong. I'm just trying to pin
The
down.
Chiddush of the Alter Rebbe and the Chabad, the whole idea of a neshama, it's not the Alter Rebbe's novelty. This is from Moshe Rabbeinu. The idea of a neshama is that there are human beings that could be really selfless, completely
question,
selfless.
yeah.
That's a big novelty. That's not a given. We take it as a given. Sure, we're selfless. We don't even know what selfless really means. Until you start nailing it down, we realize that it's not that easy to be selfless.
It's not that easy at all.
And that
And
was
most Jews are not
it's out there.
selfless. Most people that have a neshama don't either utilize it.
Right.
So I'm saying that the chiddush is that the novelty is that a yid could be totally selfless. It's not either so easy. It takes time.
It is a novelty.
It's a big novelty.
Well, it is.
Now, there are some, it says, the Chsidim Maseilim, we talked about this at the end of chapter 1, there are righteous Gentiles that could also go beyond. Because it says there's human soul comes from such a realm called Klipas Nega, that they can truly be good. It's a chiddush, but it's not a given. The human can do a stone is a stone. What is a stone? A stone is an existence. Is that a person could be not is not a normal thing. That there should be a physical creation that's not self-motivated is not a normal thing. It's a very, very big novelty. There are very few people that have that ability because the soul comes from some place there that's very unique. It says every Jewish soul is that way.
So
Say that, but it's a chiddush. That's the meaning of a chosen people. It's a whole different thing. But let's get back to the Jew. We're talking about the Beinoni over here, yeah? Within the Jewish people. Even the Beinoni that has a neshama, what's his main me? What's his main? Who's the human being over here? It's his animal soul. It's meaning the human soul. The neshama is a guest, an attachment. Is an attachment. Let's read it in Alter Rebbe's words. This is the Sitra Achra, which is the very man himself in intermediate people, in whose heart the vital soul which animates the body is in its native strength. Hence it is the very man himself, whereas with regard to the divine soul within him, it is said, he has a neshama also. So what does it say regarding the neshama? We say it every morning in davening. It says, the soul which thou gave within me, you with me?
Is pure.
Is pure. Note the words, which thou gave within me. There's a me, and then that's within me. Who's the me? The human soul, and the neshama is within me. Implying the man himself is not identified with the pure soul, except in the case of tzaddikim, in whom the contrary is true, namely, that the pure soul, the neshama, the divine soul, is the man, while their body is called the flesh of man. It's already, I also have a body to take care of. The real identity by tzaddik is his neshama. But he also, God gave him a body. It's the other way around. We are a body and a human soul that God gave us a neshama. By the tzaddik is the other way around. His neshama became his identity and his body is the attachment. Compare the statement of Hillel, the elder, to his disciples, who when going to eat used to say he was going to eat lunch, yeah? He was in the middle of learning, he closed the books, let's go eat lunch. What did he say? He didn't say, let's go have lunch. That's what me and you say. Right. What did he say? He used to say that he was going to perform an act of kindness to the lowly and poor creature. Who's this lowly and poor? His body. The body is I got to give it a little bit kindness too. Let's go feed it a little bit. Let's go. He was talking to students, but what he meant to say was, we got to take care of this nudnik. There's a nudnik that's attached to us called a body, and we have to feed it, otherwise it dies. But it's not him. That's not his true identity. That was Hillel. Wow. By which he meant his body, which he regarded as if it were foreign to him. Therefore he used the expression that he was performing an act of kindness towards it, in giving it food, because he himself was nothing else but the divine soul, since it alone animated his body and flesh, inasmuch as in the tzaddikim, the evil that was in the vital soul, the human soul, pervading his blood and flesh, had been transformed into good and absorbed into the very holiness of the divine soul. So what's left? His body, his physical flesh. So now the physical flesh needs food, so let's go give it a little kindness. It's a separate thing already. It's an identity, a foreign identity. That's stuck to us. I don't mean that in the literal sense, stuck. It's not a negative, but it's not the true identity of the tzaddik. Within an intermediate, however, since the substance and essence of the vitalizing animal soul, which is derived from the Sitra Achra and pervades his body and blood and flesh, has not been transformed into good, it surely constitutes the man itself. If so, he is removed from God with utmost remoteness. For the lusting drive in his animal soul is capable of lusting also after forbidden things, which are contrary to his blessed will, even though he does not crave their actual fulfillment, God forbid. He doesn't ever think of actually doing it, going into it. But he does have a craving for it. Yet they are not truly scorned by him as by the tzaddikim, as explained above in chapter 12. In this he is inferior and more loathsome and abominable than unclean animals, and insects and reptiles, as is mentioned above, and as is written, but I am a worm and not a man. And he says in the parenthesis, this will finish. Even when his divine soul gathers strength within him to arouse his love of God during prayer, this is not altogether genuine, since it is transient and vanishes after prayer. as has been discussed earlier at the end of chapter 13. So this is a situation where there's a problem. You have to fight it.
Don't you feel it's every day a fight?
It's a fight every minute, yeah.
Are tzaddiks born tzaddiks?
No. They're born with the potential to be tzaddik.
So there's the transformation.
Yeah, they transform it over time, but you have to be born with that ability. Not everyone can be a tzaddik.
Not just the ability, but the desire, no?
You have the ability and you work on it, you'll have it. Yeah. You have to have a neshama for it. You have to have a tzaddik's neshama. If you don't have it, you don't have it. It's not your fault. Don't worry about it. What?
Were there children that people identified very young that they were going to grow up tzaddiks?
Yeah, sure.
The Rebbe, I would think.
Absolutely.
When he was 5 years old.
Yeah, sure.
They became, but
The
that you
Pope
already knew, they were already, by the time...
The Rebbe's mother knew that her son is going to be who he's going to be. To the extent, I don't know, but she saw he wasn't a regular kid.
Yeah, okay. I believe...
The Rebbe wrote a letter in
I believe that.
1952 to the President of Israel, Ben Tzvi. He wrote him that from the day I went to Cheder, and even before I had visions of Mashiach and what the world's going to look like, and he was dreaming about Mashiach already from then, with all the ramifications and everything, and how the world is,
From the time
from
he
he
was
was
5?
4 or 5 years old already. And he learned all. He didn't stop learning. He was a very unique child.
I believe you can tell from early on.